Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sun Moon Audiobook, the channel where we share wisdom and inspiring book journeys to help you grow and develop your best self, inside and out. A single leaf drifted down in the silence of dawn, dancing through golden air before resting gently on the earth. No applause, no fanfare, and yet, in that moment, it fulfilled everything it was meant to be. Sometimes, it's the quietest shifts, the unseen, the unfelt, the unnoticed that change the world within us. The way we speak, the way we listen, the way we make others feel seen. These things, too, fall like leaves and reshape the seasons of our lives. There's something we often forget in our pursuit of success, happiness, and connection. We think we must be louder, smarter, faster. We think influence is something we assert, something we dominate with power, with argument, with proof. But real influence, it begins with presence, with warmth, with the courage to soften rather than harden. Dale Carnegie didn't write a book about manipulation. He wrote a quiet revolution, a guide to becoming deeply human again in a world that so often forgets how. And it begins in the most overlooked place. Appreciation, not flattery, not false praise, but real, rooted, glowing appreciation. The kind that sees the person behind the performance, that slows down long enough to notice effort, not just results, that whispers, "You matter," when the world is too busy screaming, "Be more." Most people are starving for this kind of validation, even the ones who seem confident. And when you offer it sincerely, it's like giving them back a piece of themselves they didn't know they'd lost. This is how you win hearts, not by impressing, but by honoring. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But think of the last time someone looked you in the eye and told you, without agenda, that they were genuinely grateful for something you did. Maybe they said your words helped them breathe a little easier, or your kindness softened a hard day. Those moments stay with us. They become anchors. So imagine becoming that moment for others. That's what this book is really about, becoming the kind of person others feel safe with. The kind they remember not for what you achieved, but for how you made them feel seen. And it's not just about compliments. It's about interest. Real interest. The kind that listens with its whole body. When someone tells you a story, and you lean in not because you're waiting to reply, but because you actually want to understand. Because their world in that moment becomes important to you. This isn't a tactic. It's a gift. And it changes everything. You see, people will forget your advice. They'll forget your clever ideas. But they'll never forget that moment when you made them feel like their voice mattered. That's why one of Carnegie's most powerful principles is simple. Become genuinely interested in other people. Not performatively. Not because it gets you ahead. But because every person you meet carries something sacred inside them. A hope, a wound, a story. And when you reach for that, not to fix it, but to witness it, you unlock something extraordinary. Think of someone like Oprah Winfrey. Her entire empire was built on listening, on making people feel heard, seen, understood. She asked questions that weren't just journalistic, they were spiritual. And that gift of presence turned her from a news anchor into a cultural icon. That's the power of human connection when it's rooted in curiosity, not control. And yet, here's the tender truth. Most of us don't feel interesting enough to be interested in others. We're too caught in our own heads, wondering how we're coming across, wondering if we're enough. That's why this book is so powerful. It teaches you to turn the mirror outward, to stop performing and start connecting. Because connection isn't about being impressive. It's about being kind. Even something as simple as remembering someone's name, it's not trivial. It's transformational. A name is sacred. It's a song we've been hearing since birth. When someone forgets it, we feel invisible. When someone remembers it, we feel valued, seen, important. That's why Carnegie emphasized it so much. Say their name. Say it with warmth. Say it like it matters because it does. And what about conflict? What about criticism? Here's where this book becomes truly life-changing. because it teaches you something most of us were never taught. You don't have to win to influence. You don't have to be right to be powerful. In fact, the most powerful people are the ones who make others feel right even when they gently guide them somewhere else. Arguing rarely changes minds, but compassion often does. Carnegie tells us, never criticize, condemn, or complain. It's not about avoiding truth, it's about protecting dignity. Correction without care creates defensiveness. But when you affirm someone's value, even as you guide their behavior, they blossom rather than shrink. Think about how many times you've shut down because someone came at you with judgment instead of understanding. Now imagine being the kind of person who helps others rise rather than retreat. You, who are listening right now, you already carry this wisdom inside you. Maybe no one ever modeled it for you, but your soul remembers. It remembers the warmth of grace, the healing of gentleness, the quiet joy of being understood. And maybe part of you is aching to become that for others, not to be liked, but to love better, not to manipulate, but to serve. There's a reason Carnegie's book has lasted nearly a century. It's not because the world got kinder. It's because it didn't. And in the noise of power games, hustle, and attention-seeking, this book is a return to soul, to humanity, to softness that changes lives. I remember once years ago watching someone break down in the middle of a hallway. No audience, no performance, just quiet pain spilling out because life had gotten too heavy. Most people passed by, unsure of what to say. But one person knelt beside them and simply said, "I'm here." That was all. No advice, no fixing, just presence. And somehow, that was enough to hold the pieces together. It taught me something I never forgot. You don't need perfect words to make a difference. You just need to care deeply and show it. That moment reminded me of another truth Carnegie emphasized. Let the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Not to inflate their ego, but to water the roots of their soul. To whisper to the parts of them the world has overlooked. That's influence. Not the kind that bends people to your will, but the kind that helps them stand taller in their own. When you let someone feel important, not just by your words, but by the way you look at them, the way you pause to listen, the way you ask follow-up questions that show you actually care, they remember. Not just the moment, but you. Because in a world so quick to rush, so hungry to speak, the ones who listen become sacred. And there's something almost revolutionary about that. About slowing down enough to make space for someone else's worth to rise to the surface. Carnegie knew this wasn't about flattery, it was about healing. Because what people are aching for isn't praise, it's presence. There's a quiet elegance in being the kind of person who puts others at ease. Not by being grand or loud, but by being a safe place. When someone walks away from a conversation with you and feels more hopeful, more alive, more certain that they matter, that's the work of a master. And that kind of mastery doesn't come from ego, it comes from humility. Think of Abraham Lincoln. He was once known for being sharp-tongued, quick to judge. But as he grew, he realized the cost of criticism. He began choosing restraint, compassion, and diplomacy. When one of his generals failed to pursue a retreating enemy, costing the Union a chance to end the Civil War early, Lincoln wrote a scathing letter. But he never sent it. He let it stay in his drawer. Because he realized, sometimes the best leadership isn't saying what you think, it's knowing when silence is kinder. That's emotional intelligence long before the term existed. That's what Carnegie invites us into. Not passive silence, but compassionate self-restraint. You might be wondering, but what if I'm hurt? What if someone offends me? Am I supposed to just say nothing? Not at all. This isn't about suppression, it's about redirection. Instead of attacking, you seek to understand. Instead of accusing, you invite reflection. That's why Carnegie suggested, begin in a friendly way, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Because you know that the wall you tear down with kindness stays down longer than the one you try to demolish with force. There's something disarming about friendliness. It melts defenses. It opens doors. Even when someone expects a fight, and you offer kindness instead, the whole emotional dynamic shifts. You become a mirror showing them their best self. And in that mirror, most people want to rise. Another powerful idea from Carnegie is this: let the other person do a great deal of the talking. Again, simple, but profound. In a culture obsessed with broadcasting, with posting, with making sure our voice is heard, this is a radical invitation to reverse the current. To become interested instead of interesting. To draw others out rather than dominate. And what you'll find, if you try this, is that people will tell you more than you expect. They'll reveal their values, their fears, their dreams. And the moment you make someone feel heard in that way, they begin to trust you. Not because you earned it with credentials, but because you offered it with empathy. The truth is, we all carry invisible stories. Hurts no one sees. Doubts we don't say aloud. And when someone listens with kindness, not to reply, but to truly understand, they become a shelter in the storm. Carnegie's book reminds us that influence isn't control. It's invitation. It's building bridges, not walls. Letting others talk, listening deeply, remembering names, honoring their importance, all of this weaves together into a kind of social magic. It makes you magnetic not in the loud, performative way, but in the soft, trustworthy way. You become the person people seek out when life feels uncertain. And there's something quietly holy about that. But influence also means leading people where they didn't expect to go gently. That's why another principle Carnegie shares is to let the other person feel the idea is theirs. When someone feels ownership, they move, they act, they shift from resistance to responsibility. And the beauty is, when you allow someone to arrive at the conclusion themselves, they walk with more courage toward it. Love simply lit the path. It's not manipulation, it's trust building. You guide not by force, but by resonance. You ask questions that nudge. You reflect back what you hear. You plant seeds instead of delivering verdicts. And over time, people begin to change not because they were pushed, but because they were inspired. One of the mantras Carnegie weaves through his wisdom is this: arouse in the other person an eager want. It's the idea that the best leaders, the best communicators, the best humans, they inspire desire, not obligation. They help others see what's possible for themselves and ignite the hunger to move toward it. You've seen this, haven't you? Maybe in a mentor, a coach, a friend. Someone who didn't tell you what to do, it made you want to rise. That's the difference between a boss and a leader, between a critic and a guide. And you can be that kind of person too, not by force, but by light. There's a deep paradox in all of this. The more you give others the spotlight, the more they reflect it back on you. The more you speak into their value, the more they value you. This isn't a trick, it's human nature. Reciprocity lives in our bones, but someone has to go first. Someone has to model the love, the curiosity, the patience. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe even in your quiet struggle, you're being called to rise not in grand gestures, but in daily gentleness. Maybe you're the one who will choose presence over power, listening over lecturing, grace over ego. And in that choice, again and again, you become something rare. You become unforgettable. And perhaps that's the hidden secret, the thread that runs through every page of this book, that to truly influence others, we must first let go of the need to dominate them. We must trade control for compassion, trade persuasion for patience. Influence, at its highest form, is not about changing minds. It's about opening hearts. And the most powerful way to do that is by modeling what an open heart looks like. So when Carnegie reminds us to talk in terms of the other person's interests, it isn't just a strategy, it's a doorway. A way of saying, I see you. A way of stepping outside your own world and entering someone else's, not with a map or a mission, but with awe. When you speak someone else's language, their values, their hopes, their pain, you become more than relatable. You become trusted. And trust is the foundation of influence. Imagine sitting with someone who's just told you about a dream they're afraid to chase. Maybe it sounds risky. Maybe it doesn't make logical sense. But instead of lecturing them on practicality, you reflect on what matters to them. You ask why it means so much. You speak to the part of them that believes, even when they're scared. Suddenly, they're not alone. And that courage you've helped nurture, it grows. Not because you convinced them, but because you believed in them before they did. That is what Carnegie meant. Influence isn't about pressing down. It's about lifting up. And in every interaction, you get to choose. Do I build a bridge or a wall? Do I add weight or do I help someone fly? The same principle applies when we admit our own mistakes. Carnegie says, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. That's not weakness, it's strength wrapped in humility. It tells others, I'm human. I care more about the relationship than my pride. And that kind of vulnerability, it disarms. It melts resistance. It opens conversations that could have stayed closed forever. You might think, but what if I lose credibility? You don't. You gain it. Because people trust those who can own their flaws. They trust those who don't pretend to be perfect. And in a world where so many wear masks, honesty becomes magnetic. Think of the last time someone truly apologized to you. No excuses. No defensiveness. Just honest ownership. Didn't it soften you? Didn't it make you want to meet them halfway? That's the power of confession without shame. It builds trust faster than perfection ever could. And in moments where you must challenge or correct someone, Carnegie's advice is golden. Begin with praise. Call out what's right before you address what's wrong. It's not about sugarcoating, it's about context. When people know you see their goodness, they're more willing to accept your guidance because they know it comes from care, not criticism. Then, instead of giving direct orders, Carnegie suggests asking questions. Invite cooperation instead of demanding compliance. What do you think we could do differently? How might we solve this together? These aren't just softer words. They're doorways to dignity. They tell the other person, you matter in this process. Your voice counts. And when someone feels that, they lean in instead of pulling away. There's a story about Charles Schwab, a steel magnate who used these exact principles. He didn't scold his workers when they underperformed. Instead, he'd quietly ask questions, leave notes of praise, celebrate effort, and under his leadership, productivity soared. Not because people feared him, but because they felt seen and respected. Respect. That's really what all of this comes down to. At its core, how to win friends and influence people is a love letter to respect. Not the kind that's demanded or commanded, but the kind that's offered freely. Even to those who disagree. Even to those who challenge us. Even to those who haven't earned it yet, because when you give someone dignity, you remind them of their own capacity to rise. It's easy to win a debate, harder to win a heart. But hearts, once won, change everything. Maybe you've been feeling like connection is out of reach lately, like people don't really see you. Maybe your voice has felt small, or your efforts unnoticed. And maybe, just maybe, you've been craving the very things this book teaches us to: give acknowledgement, kindness, presence. If that's you, you're not alone. And here's the most beautiful truth of all. The moment you begin offering what you long for, the world begins offering it back. Not instantly, not always in the form you expect, but kindness echoes, patience returns, grace multiplies. It's not magic, it's human nature remembering itself. So what does it look like to live this? Not in theory. In real life, it looks like greeting your barista by name, asking your coworker about their weekend and actually listening, pausing before you reply to someone's mistake and choosing compassion over critique. It's small, almost invisible. But that's the point. Transformation begins in whispers. And slowly, those whispers become habits, and those habits become presence. And your presence begins to change rooms, not because you're louder, but because you're real. You won't always see the results right away. Sometimes, you'll sow seeds and walk away, wondering if they'll grow. But here's the thing about people: they remember how you made them feel. Long after the words fade, long after the moment passes, that feeling lingers. It becomes part of the soil they carry inside. And one day, when they're ready, it blossoms. Because of you. That's what this book is really about. Not winning friends the way we win trophies. Not influencing people the way we influence markets, but offering something so rare, so needed, that people can't help but be moved by it. It's about becoming the kind of person whose presence heals rather than harms, whose words nourish rather than diminish, whose silence speaks of safety, and whose attention says, "You are worthy of being known." If you're listening to this and wondering if it's too late for you, if too much damage has been done, if your habits are too far gone, if you've already burned the bridges that mattered most, please hear this. It's not too late. Change doesn't happen in a thunderclap. It happens in the moment you decide to look someone in the eye with softness instead of suspicion. In the moment you pause before reacting and choose to breathe instead. In the moment you say someone's name, not as a formality, but as a form of reverence. You are not behind. You are not broken. You're just remembering what it means to be human again. And that remembering, that return, is the beginning of every great story of transformation. Carnegie's wisdom is timeless because it taps into something eternal, the desire to belong, to matter, to be loved not for our performance, but for our presence. And when you give that to others, something unlocks inside you too. A deeper courage, a softer power, a clearer sense of who you are becoming. So how do you start? Begin small. Begin gently. Compliment someone today, but do it sincerely. Not out of habit, but from the heart. Ask someone a question and listen to their answer without planning your reply. Say someone's name with warmth. Apologize when you're wrong without defending yourself. Let someone else shine and celebrate them. Choose silence over sarcasm. Choose curiosity over judgment. Choose kindness over being right. And if you fail, and you will begin again. That's the beauty of this path. There is no perfection, only practice, only presence, only the next right word, the next kind gesture, the next sacred pause. You don't need to read the book cover to start living it. You already know this truth in your bones. You felt it in the moments when someone looked at you with love, when someone chose patience instead of punishment, when someone helped you believe in yourself again. And now, you get to pass that on. You don't need a stage to make an impact. You don't need a title to be a leader. You just need to care, really care, and show it. Carnegie's principles aren't formulas. They're reminders. Reminders that we change the world not by shouting louder, but by listening deeper. Not by being impressive, but by being kind. Not by outsmarting others, but by loving them where they are. And love, after all, is the most radical form of influence there is. So here's the invitation from me to you, from Dale to all of us. Be the one who listens, the one who forgives, the one who lifts, the one who remembers names, celebrates others, and apologizes without pride. Be the one who leaves people better than you found them. Because in the end, it's not about winning people. It's about walking with them, loving them, reminding them they matter. Like ripples across a quiet lake, your presence, your choice to live this way will echo far beyond what you see. And someone, somewhere, will stand taller because of it. If this message stirred something in you, if it whispered to that quiet part of you that still believes in kindness, connection, and the courage to be soft in a hard world, then share it. With someone who needs it, with someone who's forgotten how powerful they are. Like it, comment with your own reflection, and subscribe for more soul-to-soul conversations like this one. Your voice matters here. Your story belongs. And as we close, imagine this: a single candle lighting another. No sound, no spectacle, just flame touching wick. one life touching another. That's how it begins. That's how it always begins. And you, dear listener, you are the flame.